This time I want to talk about Zelda bosses, but not the good ones. After some minor frustration in my Skyward Sword Let's Play, bosses are at least somewhat fun, and there aren't too many that are actual garbage, which is why I'm limiting this video to just 5 picks. I'm also limiting it to 1 boss per game, for the sake of variety. Finally, you should note that I haven't gotten past the 4th palace in Adventure of Link, so there are a few potential candidates that don't have a chance to make this list, but I have completed every other Zelda game at least once. With that out of the way, here are the 5 Zelda right off the bat. When you enter the center of the room, you're taken to a terrifying sea serpent. Instead, what you're greeted with is a ball inside some slime. That's it. Just a tendril of slime with a small nucleus. This shouldn't be menacing at all, but Morpha's single attack is difficult in all the wrong ways. All it will do is try to wrap around you, and if it succeeds, you're stuck in a long animation that deals a lot more damage than most things in the game. Instead of adding tension to the fight, it's just an inconvenience. Of course, there's a pretty well-known way to cheese the boss. If you pull it into the corner and time your strikes right, you can finish it in one, sure, but no more fun or exciting. When it comes to Morpha, you're left. At the start of the video, I said I would go over the bosses that frustrate me the most, but frustrating doesn't always mean difficult. The anglerfish is only frustrating for how pathetic it is. Based on the footage you're seeing here, you might not get that impression. If you actually wait long enough to let it start doing things, this boss is so easy that even on a first playthrough, a casual player might beat it in a few seconds flat. That was certainly my experience my first time through Link's Awakening. I spammed the B button at the start of the fight, and then the boss faded away and died. The game had been a decent challenge to 13-year-old me, so I was stunned at how fast the boss went down, but not in a way that made me feel accomplished. If anything, I felt cheated out of a good battle. Anglerfish is such an underwhelming boss that I had to put it above Morpha, because at least that boss actually attacks you. The boss of the Great Bay Temple, but then I remembered the 3DS version of Twinmold. This is a rare case where a remake actually deviates from the original game, making this battle completely different, and not nearly as fun. In the N64 version, you could either shoot the tails with light arrows. The Giant's Mask method was simple but fun, and becoming the same size as a giant monster to take it on King Kong style gave the battle an epic feel. Faithful remake. But what really makes it a problem is that the changes aren't conveyed well at all. For starters, you can't actually defeat the red worm before the blue one, but the game doesn't indicate that in any way. If you go in blind his eyes enough times, a feat all its own given how frantically the worms move around, will the Giant's Mask appear. You're forced to use it now, and after interrupting the fight with an awkwardly timed treasure chest animation, you get back to the action. You'd think the fight would go back to normal at this point, but you're denied your sword in giant form now, meaning you have to beat the monster with your fists. I guess that amplifies the King Kong feeling, but really it just feels slow and clunky. On top of that, it's not hinted at all what the boss's actual weak point is, because it's one of few not to have a giant ball at it, when in reality you can simply wail on its midsection. Why even let me pick up and throw this thing if it's just a slower alternative to what I'm supposed to do? On top of that, Twinmold's patterns are difficult to follow, and it can hit you from afar with fireballs to slow your advance, making this feel like a slow game of tag instead of an epic fight. When you finally weaken the creature, you have to grab it and spin it around like Bowser in Super Mario 64 for some reason, and then the fight's still not over. You get to do this 2 more times, with the game's clock ticking closer to doomsday every second. My first time through, I was an experienced Zelda player, but it felt like it took me more than half an hour of real time to take this guy down, which was more time than Termina had left before the moon fell. I doubt anyone will be surprised, but coming in as the second worst Zelda boss is Moldorm, the big bad of the Tower of Hera. Anytime this guy hits you, he deals high knockback, and considering how much of the arena he takes up, he's gonna hit you a lot. That's a huge problem because a wide pit surrounds the arena, and there's even a small one in the middle. Falling into these pits doesn't simply deal damage, but instead takes you back to the lower floor, forcing you to climb all the way back up. If you're particularly unlucky, you'll fall down 2 floors in a row, having to go all the way back on potentially low health. But that's not all. Anytime you fall, it'll take many tries. And even though you're provided with a generous supply of hearts, means you could simply die just from getting knocked down too many times, even if you're just one hit away from defeating the boss. Moldorm is one boss that causes me dread on any playthrough, no matter how much I've improved at the game. It's no secret that I love Skyward Sword despite its flaws, but The Imprisoned is a hard one to forgive. There's nothing wrong with fighting the same boss 3 times with it gradually getting stronger. In fact, the game already does this very successfully with Girahim, but The Imprisoned is just a bad fight in general. Its first form is okay, at least. All you have to do is cut off its toes and push the ceiling spike back into its head. With it stomping or slithering up the spiral towards the sealed temple, even sending out shockwaves on its third phase, this can be fairly challenging. If this were the only fight against the Imprisoned, it would actually stand out as a unique overworld boss with some interesting mechanics. Unfortunately, it all goes downhill from there. You fight the Imprisoned 2 more times throughout the game, with it getting new tricks up its sleeve each time. Each of these new tricks makes your task more demanding. For example, his walking speed increases, and the size of his shockwaves gets bigger, to the point that you can barely get in on the boss's weak point. I went into the second and third fights with an upgraded stamina potion, and even then I could barely keep up. Even with Groose launching bombs at it, the Imprisoned only stays stunned long enough for you to get its back toes and maybe a couple on the front, and then it's back to stomping. You have to wait for Groose to load his next bomb before you can realistically get in on the thing again, and at that point it's covered significant ground. And that still isn't the worst part. When the Imprisoned topples over during the second or third fight, it's possible for its arms to block your path to the ceiling spike, or for it to push you over the side of the cliff. This means you have to dash to the nearest gust of wind to take you to the next level, so you can either jump down to it from above, or get back to the level you were on before. But if the Imprisoned is positioned— No! I am so ticked off right now, this is not even funny. And then, finally, there's the third form, when he starts gliding upward on the third phase. If you manage to beat him to the top, which is already somewhat challenging, you have to launch yourself onto his head to do pretty precise. If you miss just once, you've essentially lost, and will have to do the whole fight all over again. The Imprisoned brings some interesting ideas to the Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, let me know if you have any suggestions for future videos. In the meantime, this is FP Productions, and I'll see you next time.